Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Who Are You podcast. I'm your host, Connor Overbay. If this is your first time checking out the podcast, welcome, welcome, welcome. Make sure you guys give us a follow on all the social media. It's going to be at Who Are You Pod from everything from Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, all the normal spots. You guys know where to find us at nowadays. Also, if you guys want to check out the video side of the podcast, we finally started doing some more YouTube videos for our interviews and everything. It's going to be Who Are You podcast for the YouTube, and you guys will be able to find all that stuff on there, little clips, everything like that, and everything in between. But today, I'm sitting down with a very, very special guest, a gentleman who had me on his podcast as well, and it's Mr. Rich. Is it Herrera or Herrera?
Herrera.
Thank you. I'm terrible with last name, so
that's okay. It's okay.
But welcome to the podcast, man. You have your own podcast. It's the Eat Your Content podcast.
Yeah.
So it's awesome. You had me on last week, and before we get too deep into the conversation, if you guys want to let everybody know where they can follow you, anything you want to promote here at the beginning.
Yeah, sure. So you can find me on all the social media at Eat Your Content, and also on my personal at Rich Herrera. Also doing the YouTube thing, so at Eat Your Content on YouTube. Always posting the videos there, posting foodie pics and things like that. So yeah, I was thrilled to have you on the pod last time, and this is kind of like part 2 of this crossover, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Hell yeah, man. Like, I'm really big on collaborating with podcasters. I love when we can get together and help, each other grow. There's some podcasters who are not like that. They don't want to, kind of cross-pollinate or anything like that, and I'm big on doing that. I love sitting down with people who, maybe are a little bit newer in the podcast game, and you've been in for, about a year now is what you were saying?
Yeah, about a year. I recorded my first episode in October 22, and then I uploaded it January 2nd, 2023.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so, that time frame between October and January was just a lot of research of how do I do this, right? I got the recording. Now what do I do with it? So, yeah, and then I uploaded it January 2023, and it's 60 some odd episodes in now. So
hey,
yeah.
Congrats, man. That's huge. A lot of people don't make it past really that 40 mark. Podcasting is one of those games where it's like people are like, oh, I'm so excited. I want to do all this. I want to invest so much money into this. And then they do it, and they're like, I don't know if this is for me.
Right.
So It's a big thing. So congrats on that, man. 60 episodes is huge, and obviously keep going, keep doing your thing, man. I loved your show. I personally enjoyed being on it. So if you guys haven't checked out my episode on the Eat Your Content podcast, go check it out. It'll be linked in the description and everything. Yep. And I really enjoyed it. You had great questions. You asked, a good mix of things, whether it was about the food. Obviously, you guys are talking about your foodie, pop culture things, and, really a good mix of stuff. And you've had some pretty cool guests on there from what I've seen as well. I was like, Top Chef that you've had on there, some winners.
A few Top Chef contestants. I mean, I got to tell you, my podcast origin story isn't as altruistic as yours. So if you don't know his, I'm sure if you're regular listeners of Who Are You, you know his Connor's story. But if you don't, go listen to mine. He'll tell you the history of his. But mine is not nearly as altruistic. I watched The Bear back in October, season 1. It came out the summer previous, and I heard a lot about it. And I back up a little bit, I guess. I'm kind of a food writer a little bit. I write for Jack's Restaurant Reviews. .com.
Nice.
Yeah, so I write for them. I've been doing that for a long time, and I always loved food and writing about it, and thought, I love watching TV shows about food. So I watched The Bear, binged the first season in a weekend, and the first thing I wanted to do was talk about it. But I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. And specifically, I wanted to talk to a chef that has kind of been where the main character has been and trying to run a restaurant, open a restaurant, and get their ideas of how real was it? How much of Hollywood was it, and how much of it was based in reality? So, with my food writing, I have a few connections in town, and I called up Chef Dennis Chan from Blue Bamboo.
Oh, really?
Down in Mandarin, and he was more than happy to do it, and we knocked out the entire season in one sitting, in an hour and a half. Now, since then, I've broken it up into more digestible chunks because I've learned my lesson, because that was a long one.
How long was it?
It was an hour and a half long episode.
That's not terrible in my opinion,
but I didn't go in depth into the episode as much as I wanted to.
Understandable,
right?
Okay.
Because I wanted to keep it within, under 2 hours.
Gotcha.
But he was great. He came on, and, the only thing I had was my laptop, a set of earphones, and my webcam for my MacBook. And that was it. and all he had was his phone and the microphone to his phone, and the sound quality. If you listen to that first episode, the sound quality is just horrible. It is horrible. And there's no video. So this, although I feel like I should re-release it at some point, but it's all audio, and the audio is horrible, but it was just so much fun. And I got to talk to him about it, and he really broke down some of the things like, yeah, they really nailed the stress of opening a restaurant. And so I thought, I think I got a thing, right? You know, I think I got something going here where there's podcasts about food, and there's podcasts about TV shows, and there's podcasts about foodie TV shows. But my kind of, you kind of try to find your niche in a podcast, right? So I tried as much as I can to have actual chefs on my podcast talking about these foodie shows and talking about, how much of it is real, and, if all those things, right?
Of course, yeah.
So that's been really fun. And for having only been on a podcast, doing a podcasting thing for a year and a half, I've been really surprised at the level of guests I've been able to book.
I agree.
It's crazy to think about. Like the second episode, I watched this movie called The Menu.
Okay. I don't think I've seen The Menu.
Ray Fiennes and Anya Taylor-Joy.
Okay, yeah.
Great, just satirical movie about how we consume art, whether it's food or fine art. Or
exactly.
It's great. So if you haven't watched that, go stream it somewhere. I don't know where it's streaming at the moment.
Somewhere around there.
It's somewhere out there. It's great. But I got the chef consultant from that movie that taught Ray Fiennes how to look chefy. That was his job. His job was to make all the extras look like chefs, basically make the set run like a fine dining restaurant. And he taught everybody how to do that. And I didn't know the guy, right? I just slipped into his DMs, and I was like, hey, here's who I am. I pitched it, and he goes, sure, why not? So he came on and he talked about all the behind the scenes stuff of this movie, The Menu, which is great, So that's the kind of stuff that I love to talk about with food and pop culture. And then did episodic recaps of Top Chef.
That's awesome. I used to love that show. I watched it all the time when I was a kid. Yeah,
I was kind of off of it for a bit, but then season 20 came around, and it was Top Chef World All Stars.
Oh wow!
And I thought, wow, this is a good chance to kind of jump back in and because I love Top Chef. Like I said, I fell off of it for a bit, but that season kind of pulled me back in because it was Top Chef contestants from all over the world, different versions of the show on the show. And I wanted to do episodic recaps of it. And I'm like, who can I do this with? Well, again, I reached out with my contacts, and Chef Kenny Gilbert, if I know
what you're talking about.
So Chef Kenny Gilbert had a couple of restaurants here in Jacksonville. Sadly, does not anymore, but he's down in Miami now. He did all 14 episodes with me, and he was on Top Chef season 7.
Wow.
So not only did I get to do episodic recaps with a chef that knows what we're looking at, right, and can kind of explain what's going on, but has been on the show and can give me okay, here's what's really happening behind the scenes of this particular challenge.
Exactly.
What they're not showing you or what they're not telling you. And it was fantastic. And I mean, he's incredibly busy. At the time, he still had his restaurant in Jacksonville, so he's jetting back and forth between Jacksonville.
What was his restaurant?
Silky's Chicken.
Okay, yeah, I've heard that before. I don't think I've ever had a chance to go. Obviously, it's not here anymore, but no, I've heard that one before. Yeah. Okay.
Silky's, and he had Gilbert Social, and then he had a place up in Fernandina Beach. So, yeah, I mean, he was jetting back and forth between Miami and Jacksonville. There was times we did podcasts, and he was in his car.
I like it.
I mean, it was real, like, guerrilla style.
Commitment to the game, man.
Commitment to, we'll record a pod with whatever means necessary. But he was just so gracious with his time, and I felt so lucky to have him on. And then when season 20 wrapped up, I was able to get the finalist and the winner of that season on my pod.
I saw that.
Chef Boudeleau was the winner of season 20, and this is the winner of season 19, the only back-to-back Top Chef winner in the history of the show. And then Chef Sarah Bradley was a finalist. I got them on. And again, it was just me slipping into their DMs or finding their webpage and hitting the contact me button and just shooting it off. At that point, I was just like, I'm going to ask anybody to be on my pod. The worst they can say is no, right? So I kind of had that attitude going in. And one of my favorite episodes I recorded, have you ever seen the movie Waiting?
Waiting. I've heard of it. I don't think I've seen it by chance.
2005. It's a raunchy R-rated kind of workplace comedy.
Okay.
Set in a fictional restaurant that kind of looks like Bennigan's.
Okay.
Or Applebee's.
And
it was like one of Ryan Reynolds' first movies. It was like right after Van Wilder. And there's a bunch of other young, up-and-coming actors in that particular year. And I got the writer and director of the movie on my pod.
Dang.
To just Ryan McKittrick.
Look at you.
And to talk about the movie. And he was so funny and a little bit unhinged. And go check that. I mean, it's so hilarious. The one question I loved that I asked him, I said, could you make a movie like Waiting? Think about the early 2000s and how raunchy
I think I have seen the movie.
R-rated comedies were at that time. I mean, people just did not care.
No.
And I said, could you make a movie like Waiting in 2024 at the time that I recorded? He thought for a minute, he paused, he took off his glasses, and he goes, no, I couldn't do it. I could not get away with the things I got away with writing and directing that movie today that I did in 2005. I said I could still make the movie, but it'd be a completely different movie.
100%, because, things have changed over time. Now, obviously, like political correctness and all this kind of stuff is in the atmosphere now, you know, which I understand. There's some things that should be said, some things that, some people may get offended and all that kind of stuff. I'm of the mindset where it is what it is. They are just words. They are sounds that are made with our mouths kind of thing. But also, maybe it just doesn't hit me in the heart like somebody else it would. So I understand. But, comedic movies back in the day, dude, like I was a big fan. These aren't food movies, but like, Step Brothers with Will Ferrell and everything. Yeah. Hangover, if you want to go a little bit later into the 2000s. Can you imagine if they made that today?
Yeah, you couldn't.
They'd be pillaging in the streets right now. It'd be crazy to see. But, it's cool to see these old movies. And I'm glad, I was born in 99. I'm 25 years old.
Yeah.
And, I'm glad that I was still around just for that last little bit of like the real good movies nowadays. I feel like today they make just a bunch of remakes of stuff.
Yeah.
And it just makes me sad. I'm like, it's not as good. It's not, there's not the original ideas that they used to come up with, and now it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
But the foodie movies though, I do like, for me personally, like I grew up cooking with my family. Like my parents divorced when I was young. So I had my mom and then my dad, and they both like to cook. So I was very lucky where I grew up in the kitchen with my mom, or grew up in the kitchen with my dad, and they taught me how to cook as well. My wife, Shannon, love her to death. She doesn't cook herself, but I do. But I am a big fan of cooking. Are you a cooker yourself? Or?
Yeah, I cook. I do most of the cooking at my house, and kind of a funny little story about that. Here's how that started, right? I didn't do a lot of cooking when me and my wife first got married, right? Mm-hmm. She did a lot of cooking. I come home one day from work, and men don't ever ask this of your wives, right? You walk in the door. Yeah, and my wife works too. She's a nurse. She's a nurse practitioner now. So she just got done working, and I've just got done working, and she gets home before I do. And I got home and was like, what are you cooking for dinner? Yeah.
The death glare. Yeah, I can feel the glare.
And she's like, your arms ain't broke? And I was like, got it. Yep. And then from that, I don't have to ever ask that again. So that from that point on, I picked up cooking.
Okay.
Just to, help out. And at that point I realized, okay, I gotta do some stuff. We were a young married couple, Mm-hmm. And so I really got into cooking. I mean, I was like Food Network.
I love Food Network.
Yeah. Nonstop, and just like learning recipes. And now my wife's annoyed that I cook like all the time. Like she literally doesn't cook. Like, I mean, she does cook. She has to start before I get there.
Okay.
Because if I get there and nothing's done, I'm just getting in the kitchen. I'm putting something together, right?
What do you like to cook? Like, what's more of your flavor, or your style of food that you like to cook?
I just like to throw stuff in a pot and see what happens.
I like it.
I mean, I feel like you should have everybody, especially if you're like a young guy growing up, right? You're getting out on your own for the first time. You need to have a couple of recipes in your bag. You need to have a good roast chicken recipe. You need to have a good pasta recipe, and you need to know how to make some eggs.
You got to know eggs.
I think if you do those three things, you're set. Mm-hmm. So I do like doing chicken and stuff like that. But yeah, so I do most of the cooking, and me and my wife, try to do this romantic thing, try to cook it in the kitchen together, and it's not. I'm just like, get out of my way. Get out of my way. Just go sit down. I'll tell you when dinner's ready. This is not romantic. You're stressing me out right now. Just get out of my kitchen. But
yes, chef.
Yeah, she's cool about it now, though. I mean, she loves it. She loves that I'm cooking and stuff like that. But she gets home before I do sometimes, and she'll start cooking before I do. So I'll get home and I'm like, you need some help? She goes, no.
Heard that.
Because as soon as I start helping, I'm probably going to take over and just be like, oh, well, okay, you need to do, and she hates that.
What would you say is your signature dish?
I do this like kind of smothered chicken recipe.
Okay.
Where I have bone-in chicken thighs, and I'll brown them on both sides. and some oil. And then I'll pull the chicken out, and I'll throw in a mirepoix.
Okay.
Carrot, celery, onions. Let those,
the Holy Trinity.
Yeah.
Yep.
Get those browned, and then I'll throw in like bay leaves, and then a bunch of seasoning and spices, and then I'll throw some flour in there and make a roux. Throw some chicken stock in there. Let that get nice and bubbly and desired thickness, and then I'll throw the chicken back in there, and I'll throw it in the oven at 400 for like an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. Pull it out, get some rice. Done.
That sounds delicious, to be honest with you, man.
Done.
I say, for me, I'm a big proponent. Like, I like Italian food. I'm not a red sauce person, so I like more of like the lemon butter sauces or like an Alfredo. My signature dish is chicken piccata. That's I say I'm a big chicken piccata fan. I think that's what won her heart a little bit with me as well. As like I used to make that pretty frequently before we got married, and now I'm a little bit more busy with work and everything.
The marry me dish.
Yeah, man. Like I've always just been a big fan of cooking. I've said this on past podcasts, but I feel like food is one of those things. Some people think it's just something you eat and it's fuel and it is what it is. For me, I think sitting down for a dinner is one of the most powerful things you can do. Yeah. You sit down, you can have a conversation with people. I know some people just sit there and look at their phones, but like whenever me and her go out to dinner together, I make it's a rule for both of us not to sit there and look at our phones. We sit there, have a conversation, take in the scenery, take in what we're eating, and just have a conversation. And whether it's your relationship, a business meeting, or just going out by yourself, it's an experience all in itself. You have to look at what the atmosphere is like. Is it dark and dim in there, or is it bright? Like the lights are bright. There's bright like stuff on the walls and everything. And I think it's an experience that's lost on some of the younger generation now. Yeah. So I love food. I've always been a big fan. I didn't get this tall off not eating or anything like that.
Yeah.
So always been a big fan. But you said you're married. How long have you been married for?
Ooh, my wife might kill me after this. 26 years this January.
Congrats, man.
I think 26. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 26.
That's huge, man.
We have an anniversary blanket that my mom made us for, and we always double check that. I think it's 26.
It's smart. How'd you and your wife meet?
We met in college. So we both went to the same college.
What college was that?
Toccoa Falls College up in Northeast Georgia.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a small little kind of Bible college up that way. I was her admissions counselor.
Okay.
Actually. So I called her up and we met and love at first sight, and yeah, so
that's awesome, man.
Yeah. So we got married and been married that long now. We got 2 grown kids. I have 3 grandkids with 1 on the way.
Dang.
Yeah. So I got
busy man.
Yeah. So the 4th grandkid is due in November.
Congrats.
So we're
how old are your kids?
Geez. They're my stepkids. So
okay, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So they were hers but they're my kids, right?
Yeah.
So 30 something and 40 something.
Oh, okay, so they're grown. They're grown. Yeah,
out of the house. But I grew up with them. We married that long. Part of their lives from they were preteens growing up. So I was 19 when me and my wife met. She's 10 years older than I am.
Gotcha.
So I was 19, she was 29, and then we were married about a couple of years later. So her kids were, preteens. She was a teenage mom growing up. So, so I was a stepdad, and I told my mom and my family that at first, not too thrilled, not too thrilled. There was a lot of baggage that people had to get over, but yeah, we made it work, and it's worked out so far. So
I think it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful, man. And like I've said this on the podcast many times before as well. Is like I respect step parents because, like I was telling you, my parents were divorced. My parents divorced when I was 5 years old. So young kid, not understanding what was going on and everything. And then my stepfather came into my life, and he's still in my life currently. And it's a hard position to be in because the kids are like, you're not my dad,
right?
At first, they're like, what are you doing here? You're some dude that just came into my life. What the hell are you doing here? Kind of thing. And then, they grow up, they get a little older, they respect what you did because, there's a lot of people who aren't willing to take that. Right. You've talked about the baggage side of things. There's a lot of people who are maybe younger and they're looking at that like, I don't think I can do that. And then there's someone like you who took it in stride and said, you know what, I'm going to do this. Obviously, you love your wife and, you love your kids now as well. And you've worked on it and you became a parent. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things to jump into something and you're like, whoa.
Yeah,
I'm a parent now. There's kids that rely on me and my wife to make sure they survive.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's a crazy thing, but that's awesome, man. And like, I respect it. I really do. Like, I've even told my stepfather this multiple times. I'm like, when I first met you, I didn't know what the hell was going on. And as I've gotten older, I've understood more of what that position was like. You know, he's not trying to step on my dad's toes and vice versa kind of thing. They're trying to raise a young man to be a man and grow. And it's a hard position to be in. So I respect you for it, man. That's awesome that you stepped in there and, you know, took the position that you did. And, you know, obviously they're still here to this day and got grandbabies on the way, man.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. Like, and with the grandkids, it's like, I'm not the step grandfather. I'm their grandfather. So that's fun. And, you know, the oldest is 16 or going to be 16. And then the youngest is on the way in November. So it's, yeah, being a grandkid's fun, or being a grandparent is fun with the grandkids. You know, they play with them and then you just kind of hand them back.
How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I am 47.
Wow, you're 47 and you have like you said, a 16-year-old grandchild?
Yeah.
Holy shit. That's crazy, man.
Yeah. So, yeah.
That's awesome. And with, you know, being married for 20 something years now, what would you say is your key to a happy marriage that lasts?
She's right. I mean, I'm no hesitation. Right?
I love that. That's a good
happy wife, happy life. If the wife is happy, you're going to be happy. Not to say that you ignore your own,
of course.
Not to say you ignore your desires and your wants and needs, but you know, on a scale, it's the wife first, and then she'll take care of you. So
hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So happy wife, happy life. She's right. Yes, dear. All words young married couple should live by.
Shannon's looking at me like, you hear that? You hear that right there? That's a smart man.
She's rooting for me. So.
No, that's awesome, man. I'd love to hear that. And you're not originally from Florida. Where are you guys originally from?
So my wife is originally from Alabama.
Okay.
From Auburn.
Nice.
So I'm originally from Savannah. So we met in Northeast Georgia. So we're kind of like up that way. So I originally was born in New York. I'm kind of from all over. I was born in New York, and then I lived in Michigan for a while. So I was a Yankee until I was about 12, and then I moved to Savannah, 12, 13 years old, culture shock. And then I've been in the South ever since. So I'm Southern, born and bred, or not born, bred.
Yeah.
And yes, and then we moved. So me and my wife met in Georgia, and then we moved to Tennessee for a bit. And then we moved back to her hometown and lived there for a few years. And then we moved here. So we've been in Jacksonville for like 10 years now.
You guys have been all over the place.
We've been everywhere, man. And we've been everywhere.
What made you guys choose Jacksonville as a landing spot? Obviously, with your wife being a nurse practitioner, I know Mayo Clinic's here and there's a bunch of good hospitals, but was there another reasoning for that?
No, we just threw a dart at the wall.
Okay.
And on a map, literally. I mean, we were in Alabama, and that's where her family's from. And, we said, hey, I want to go do something different. We need to turn the page on our life. Right?
Yeah.
Where do you want to go? And I was like, I want to be by the beach, as close to the beach as we can go. I'm like, all right. So I got some family in Savannah, but we didn't want to go to Savannah. And then, when we lived in Alabama, we went to Panama City a lot. And I'm like, well, unless I want a job at a go-kart place or something, I got to do something in a bigger city, right? So we were kind of putzing around with what we wanted to do. And then we visited Jacksonville a few times, and I like Jacksonville because I like bigger cities. She's not much of a fan of a bigger city, but she kind of understood that the job opportunities are a little bit better in a bigger city. So we moved here, and I love it. My wife's not a huge fan of Florida.
Really?
After living here for a while, she's not liking it.
What does she not like about Florida?
Hurricanes, mainly.
That's a very true statement, especially with what we've gone through these past couple of weeks. Yeah.
So from July to like November, she's nervous as a long-haired cat or long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs.
Yeah.
So not a fan of that. And she feels like Jacksonville's not the South. I mean, it's Southern Georgia, sure.
Yeah.
But it's not like, the Alabama South. It's not Alabama South.
Yeah.
It's not that kind of South.
Florida is kind of its own thing, I would say, but we're also a melting pot of so many different cultures to why it is that way.
Yeah.
As you're saying, like, it's not like you go to Georgia, go to Alabama, where like that's the South, like good home cooking, Southern cooking and everything.
Right.
Florida is kind of its own little spot. Obviously, other states look at us and like, oh, Florida's crazy, Florida man, ha ha ha, like whatever it is. And some parts of it are. I'm not gonna lie. There's some crazy stuff that goes on here, but we're also pretty normal. Like Jacksonville is one of the biggest cities cities by landmass in the whole if not the biggest in the United States. We just surpassed 1 million people here. We have a major NFL team here as well. We have things that are going on here as well.
Yep.
Me being born and raised here, I remember where we are now on this side of town. It was nothing but trees here, man. This apartment complex didn't exist. All of Kernan, Beach Boulevard, all that stuff was just trees. And now to see all these different businesses that are here, downtown starting to develop to what it is now. Obviously, it's still a little rough down there, but they're kind of changing it up a little bit, adding more art districts and food and everything.
Yep.
But Jacksonville's come a long way compared to what it used to be.
Yeah, just in the 10 years I've been here, just the amount of growth is amazing. But yeah, I mean, so I don't know how long we'll be here. I like Jacksonville. I got a great job. I've been at my job for 8 years now, and enjoy it. I got the podcasting thing going on.
Hell yeah, man.
So I like it here. So we'll see how much the yes dear kind of works out once we decide to pull the trigger. But I mean, we'll see what happens. But I love Jacksonville. This is probably my favorite city that I've ever lived in. And I just enjoy the bigness and the smallness of it at the same time. With the pockets of the neighborhoods all through here that, you live in a neighborhood and people just kind of don't leave, right? You stay within your neighborhood, and it helps that there's a Publix in every single pocket of neighborhood. In Alabama where I lived in Auburn, there was one Publix on one side of town and one Publix on the other side of town. And that was it. That's where, where people went. There was a Winn-Dixie kind of in the middle. But, so to be able to, you kind of have that small town feel here, while at the same time having almost 1 million people.
No, I totally agree. And the people here are awesome. That's the thing, is whenever I was younger, I didn't want to live here and still to this day, I don't know if I'll live in Jacksonville my whole life here, because, I'm born and raised here. I would like to go to other places and experience living somewhere else compared to right here in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
But I mean, right now it's not terrible. I meet a lot of people, and as you said, the podcasting thing's going on and everything. And there's no shortage of people to interview here, which is cool. And, just meeting the kind of crazy, artists that are here, or like you said, the restaurateurs. One person I would recommend, I don't know if you've met him, Chef Eric Olsel. Have you heard of him?
Mm-mm.
So he is the executive chef over at the Ponte Vedra Inn and Club, and he owns Mick Flamingos here in Jacksonville.
Okay.
It's more of a gluten-free based restaurant that still tastes good. And whenever he came on, he has a great story. He was a chef up in New York, went to all the different fine dining restaurants. He served people like Leonardo DiCaprio, Kate Winslet, like these big names, and then brought his talents down here to Jacksonville and has done his thing. And he's a very talented chef from what I've seen. And he was the first person, chef that I ever interviewed on the podcast, that brought food. He brought us like his chicken sandwich in here. He brought us his hummus, and everything is I don't eat particularly healthy. I'm not like a health freak in any way, shape, or form. When I guess I should be. But his stuff is he made hummus out of cashews.
Oh, cool.
And if he didn't even tell me it was made out of cashews, I wouldn't have known.
Right.
It was delicious. And he gave us a chicken sandwich is basically he didn't blacken it. He seasoned up 2 chicken breasts. It's on gluten-free bread with some kind of ranch and some couple other different things on it. It was absolutely delicious. Shannon, what did he bring you? He brought you a salad with a big piece of salmon.
Blueberry salad, salmon, avocado.
Dang.
9 yards, and a thick balsamic type dressing.
Nice.
And she's not a balsamic fan just in general, and she sat there and ate the whole thing for dinner. It was particularly good in my opinion. But sitting down and talking to chefs, I think it's really interesting to hear where they've all gone. Because it's really it's a marathon, I guess I would say. It's not a sprint, because you don't know if you're going to stay in that certain place or if you want to open up your own restaurant. And he brought the fact of opening up how stressful it is opening up his own restaurant, and if it's going to work, if people are going to care or not.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see, and I think it's cool when someone has such a passion for something like food, and to hear it in their voice and see it in their eyes when they're talking to you. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised that you brought food to your podcast. Chefs are called to serve. That's because nobody becomes a chef to be rich. Contrary to what Food Network would show you,
it's a freaking razor thin
margin. I mean, they're lucky to make a profit. So when you're complaining about when people complain about a $18 sandwich or whatever, just know it's more than just the components of the sandwich. There's labor, overhead, all that stuff that goes into that. So they're making enough. They try to price it so that they can make a living, and that they're just not doing nothing for 12 hours and making nothing out of it. And
it's a labor of love, but we all have to survive sooner or later.
Yeah, we all got to make money. So, chefs are I truly believe that if you are a chef and that's what you decide to do for a living, you're you're called to serve. And that's what they want to do. And if perchance you make it on Food Network and you become some sort of celebrity chef, then great. But that's not what they get in there for. Now you see some young kids go to culinary school to want to be the next like Bobby Flay or whatever, and then as soon as they're done and realize, I got a degree, what am I doing washing dishes? They're out, right? So it's that's the way it is, right?
Yeah.
And then that's what they do. So I'm not surprised they brought you food. I would have been surprised if he didn't, right?
Hey, it was cool.
It's great. And plus for him, it's exposing you to his food and being able to, now you can have a personal experience and say, man, this food's great, go here. And you'll be able to, be sincere about that.
Well, yeah, that's my thing. Like anything I say on here is my true opinion.
Sure.
I'm not one of those guys where like, oh, they did this for me, so I'm going to promote them and blah, blah, blah. That's not how I like to do things. I'm pretty straightforward. If I like it, I like it. If I don't, I'll say maybe something like this part of it's good or this is not my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah.
And, there's a couple restaurants, me and funny enough, Zaxby's have had a beef over the past couple of years. me and Zaxby's aren't fans of each other.
Oh, no.
It's funny stuff. But I think the restaurant world's very interesting. And I also grew up, like my first multiple jobs was restaurants. And that's something you said in the podcast where in the interview that you did with me on your show, I think it's very important for people to have at least one restaurant job in their life, at least one.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you get to really learn how people are, when they're hungry or, you did one thing wrong and they're like, you put mustard on a burger and they get mad at you.
Yep.
I have a story that I've told on here. My first job ever that I was actually paid and taxed and everything was Five Guys Burgers and Fries. Actually, how I met her as well. And, whenever I was working there, I made it all the way from cashier all the way up to assistant general manager.
Nice.
So yeah, decent time, 18 years old, making decent money, working in the restaurants and everything. But my story is I was sitting there and, anytime someone was mad, there was an issue, the manager had to come up. So that's no problem. So I go up to the person, someone put mustard on their burger and the guy was like, someone put mustard on my burger and went, wham, right in my chest. I'm like, really? It took all it could have in me not to jump across the table, but it happened.
Do not get paid enough for this.
Yes, it happens. Especially being a young 18-year-old, 6'5", think he's bulletproof and everything.
Yeah. But
that happened, and I had to take a breath. Yeah. We fixed it. The person was happy, and we went on with our day. You know, and I think that's a situation that a lot of people need to learn. Like, you can't react off your first emotion. That's a thing where I understand being angry. People are not always going to treat you the way you feel like you should be treated. But at the end of the day, that's the world. Everybody thinks that they should be a millionaire or should be famous or anything like that. Yeah. It takes those kinds of moments to be like, okay, do I want to do this for the rest of my life? Did I deserve that, first of all? And, a lot of times you don't, but at the end of the day, people are people. Everybody's different. Just like maybe you grew up differently than I did, and you just have to learn how to kind of take it and leave it with people and just go on and, survive to the next battle kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, everybody should work in a restaurant for a little while. If not a restaurant, then retail for sure.
Oh, retail, I've heard.
Customer-facing retail. So you really learn to develop a thick skin and how to deal with people and not to take things personally and all that stuff. So everybody, if you if you haven't, then you need to go in there and do that for at least a week.
No, I totally agree.
And understand where people come from now.
So me talking about me being younger and, starting my jobs and everything, you being a young man, what was life growing up like for you? Were like mom and dad both in the house? Yeah,
well, I mean, I come from a divorced family. So I was, man, I don't even know where to start on this one. Jeez.
You're fine.
Digging deep. So I was... I don't know my biological father.
Okay.
So he left our lives when I was really young. My older sister knows him, but I don't. So he left when we were young, and then in the Philippines. So I'm Filipino, and then so I was born in New York, but didn't stay there for very long. Lived in the Philippines until I was like maybe 2, 3.
Really?
Yeah, I don't remember any of it, and I don't speak Tagalog, so I'm kind of a bad Filipino. My college roommates were Filipino, and they called me Coconut because I was brown on the outside and white on the inside. So
hilarious.
that was their nickname for me because I couldn't speak Tagalog.
Yeah,
and I didn't really eat a whole lot of Filipino food growing up.
Okay.
So so I don't know my biological father. So we moved to Michigan because I had family in Michigan at the time, and my mom remarried to a guy, and it's fine. But then they ended up getting divorced, and then that was it. And then that's when we moved to Georgia, and my mom's been a single mom since then.
Gotcha.
Since basically I was 12 or 13. So yeah, my mom was in the house. She didn't cook a lot of Filipino food. In fact, she cooked. Now, don't get me wrong, she cooked, but not a lot of Filipino
Were
food.
they both Filipino? Your father and then your mom, were they both Filipino?
My biological father is Filipino, and my mom was Filipino.
Okay.
Actually did one of those ancestry DNA tests. I thought it'd be 100% Filipino. Turns out I'm not. Mostly Filipino, a little bit of Chinese in there, which was kind of surprising.
Interesting.
But yeah, so that was fun. And so we moved, when we moved to Georgia, my family had migrated from, we were all spread out. So we had some of us in Michigan, some of us were in California, and we all kind of migrated to Georgia. Like
Gotcha.
my grandfather moved to Georgia, and then we all just kind of followed. He was the patriarch of the family. We all kind of, so that was fun. And I didn't really understand my Filipino culture until really I was around my family that much. Right?
Gotcha.
So we moved to Georgia, and we lived with my grandfather for a while until we got our own place. And that's when I really started eating Filipino food, because my grandmother made it, and she was is still a fantastic cook.
I bet that was delicious.
Yeah, I mean, again, body by Filipino grandma. So she would cook every day from scratch, and that's where I developed a love for food at that point. And yeah, so and kind of started learning my Filipino culture through the food that we ate. And little by little started learning more. And then I moved to Jacksonville 10 years ago, and I'm like, holy crap, this is like the largest Filipino minority population in the city. Our Filipinos are 35,000 of us.
Is it really? I actually didn't even know that. Okay.
Yeah, there's a reason why there's a Jollibee's.
I guess that's a good point.
And it's the only one like
in this area.
Yeah. So people come from all the Filipinos come from all over, to come to Jollibee. So yeah, the Filipino culture here, there's like 35,000 or so. It's the largest largest Asian minority group in Jacksonville.
Interesting.
I believe. Somebody fact check me on that one, but I'm pretty sure it's the largest Asian minority. I don't know if it's the largest minority group, but yeah. So lots of great Filipino restaurants here, and moving to Jacksonville and connecting with some of the Filipinos here in town through chefs and other creatives really helped me to learn and appreciate my Filipino culture a little bit more. I wouldn't say there was like kind of a self-hatred of my Filipino culture growing up. I just didn't know.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
For the longest time, I was white.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I was, but then, you go to school, you go to middle school, and you realize you're not white because people treat you a little bit differently. But so moving here really kind of helped me root my Filipino culture, and I'm grateful for that. And that's kind of why Jacksonville's a little bit special to me is because of that. And I still haven't learned Tagalog yet. That's next on the list to learn Tagalog, because I'm the only one in my family that doesn't speak Tagalog.
Oh, so that's rough. I can understand.
Rough, man. I go home for family reunions and dinners, and my great grandmother's like yelling at me in Tagalog, and I'll like elbow my mom. What's she saying? She's like, "You're getting fat." Oh, thanks, Grandma.
Love you too.
Appreciate that. But yeah, so that's kind of next on my list, just to learn some conversational Tagalog.
I think it would be very interesting. And there, as you said, like the Filipino, I've known a couple different Filipino people throughout my life. And also there's like food trucks here, like Fat Boy Fried Rice.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, awesome. I've had them on here as well. And they talked to me about that's why they did their food truck, is to bring more people, bring more attention to their culture and share it with the world.
Yeah.
And I find it very interesting. Like I've had lumpia in the past. I've had, try to mix of different things. And, me growing up white, obviously, I'm a little pasty, as some people may see. But that's the thing is, like, with me growing up, I was very picky. I was a very picky eater. And then as I got older, I started trying and like broadening my horizons on food. And that's one of my favorite things, is going out and trying something I've never had before. It's a new experience, and seeing what other cultures put in their food, obviously the joke for white people, like very basic, no salt in the chicken,
right.
Boiled chicken, basically. But like going out and trying different flavors, like in the Asian cultures, everything seems very balanced, in my opinion. There's like umami and the mix of the food, or, you go try different kinds of noodles, or, what other kinds of ingredients that we don't have here in the United States that they like either ship in or like are brought in here in some way different forms, and just trying new things, trying new flavors, and seeing what other cultures have, because it also teaches you about that culture and what they experience.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. With Filipino food, the flavor profile is more kind of like sour, tangy kind of thing. And there's some great Filipino restaurants here in town. Abstract Filipino Restaurant is probably one of my favorites. It's a little bit higher end. Chef Jojo Hernandez, I interviewed him on my pod.
Nice.
So that place is great. And then you mentioned Fat Boy Fried Rice. They're great. If you find them on the side of the road, definitely go.
They're freaking awesome.
Out.
They're awesome people too, by the way. They love what they do.
Yeah, and then of course the aforementioned Jollibee, which Jollibee,
I've never had it.
Yeah,
is it good?
It's great, man.
Yeah. Is it really?
It's really good. It's the McDonald's of the Philippines. The Jollibee's outnumbers outnumbers McDonald's in the Philippines.
Because I saw they do fried chicken and I saw spaghetti. I'm like, okay. I'm throwing off a little bit here.
I'm telling you, it's the best fried chicken in the city.
We gotta go try it, Shannon.
It's great.
Okay.
And yeah, and the Jollibee spaghetti is sweeter, than you would expect. So if you're expecting an Italian marinara, it's more like spaghetti sauce with sugar.
Okay,
a lot of sugar in it.
Interesting.
And it's topped with cut up hot dogs and cheese.
That sounds good to me. I'd eat it.
You open it, I was like, man, what am I, 12? But it's really delicious.
Yeah.
And they do have some Filipino dishes. They have something called balabok, which is kind of a pancit varietal.
Okay.
If you ever had pancit.
I know what you're talking about. I've never had it personally.
Yeah. So great food. I mean, and it's a fast food joint. And Filipinos have the same kind of memory attachment to Jollibee's as, most Americans have to McDonald's.
I gotcha.
So it's kind of that sense. So, and then there's a bakery right kind of in that same area where Jollibee is called Valerio and Sons, the baker's son.
Yeah. I've driven by it 1,000 times, just never gone in.
That place is great. They make everything fresh that day. Ooh. And if you love sweets, that's the place to go. If you're kind of into baked treats, they got and they're all traditional Filipino stuff. So.
I didn't know that was a Filipino owned business. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, they got a location out in Texas, I think, in Houston.
Okay. What's a Filipino pastry, I guess? I don't even know what an example of that would be.
So, man, right on the spot.
Sorry, I was I'm trying to think of what a Filipino sweet treat would be, and I'm thinking
time I'd have rattled off 10 of them, but now I'm having to sit around and think about it.
The bright lights mess with people sometimes.
There's this one that's my favorite, and I'll probably think of it as soon as I start talking about it. But it's basically just a sweet bun.
Okay.
And it's topped with a whipped cream cheese and sugar and cheese.
That sounds good. I'd eat
it. So that's really good. And then they have this is gonna sound. The funny thing about the Filipino language is they take some Spanish words and just claim it as their own.
Really?
So there's a little coconut rice cake called puto.
Okay.
Which you might have to mute that out to put on YouTube or whatever. Which Spanish is not a great word, but you walk into a Filipino bakery, it's give me a dozen puto.
They're huh?
And they're delicious.
Yeah.
And it's so good, and they're just little morsels. You just pop one in your mouth, and they're really, really good.
That sounds good, man. Yeah. I'm a big sweets guy. Anything pastries, chocolate, cake, all that kind of stuff. I may not look like it like I am now. Whenever I was in high school, I was 240 pounds.
Yeah.
I was a heavier dude, and I love sweets. I'm a big sweets guy. So you're talking my language right now.
Yeah, leche flan.
Yep.
That's a big one for Filipinos. So yeah, I mean, definitely go check them out. It's right off of Kernan.
Yeah.
Where Academy and all that.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. That sounds good.
Yeah, and the day they opened, I was kind of keeping track of them. The day they opened, there was a line of Filipinos just down the street, around the corner. I mean, it took forever to get in there. But it's just great to see those types of businesses thrive.
Yeah.
And have a place for these 35,000 Filipinos to get a taste of home, because Filipino food is kind of on the cusp of being the next big thing, compared to our Chinese and Japanese cousins. And I had Agnes Lopez on my podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's a Filipino photographer here in Jacksonville.
Okay.
Really big in the Jacksonville creative scene, and kind of formed this coalition of Filipino chefs called Jack's Filipino Chefs.
Oh, okay, nice.
I kind of nicknamed them the Avengers of Filipino food, because she was collecting them like the like the Infinity Stones on a gauntlet.
I love it.
And but they came out. They're working on a documentary called More Than Lumpia, because the gateway, like you were talking about lumpia, the gateway to Filipino food is lumpia.
That was my first everything I think I tried that was in that sphere of kinds of foods. Okay.
So her kind of mission is to elevate Filipino cuisine and Filipino creatives here in Jacksonville and abroad. But to Filipino restaurants, they're just not around. You go to, unless you're in a bigger city like Atlanta or like here, this is the first city I've lived in that had as many Filipino restaurants. Like
cool.
if I wanted Filipino food, I had to trek over to my grandma's and get some like frozen lumpia, some frozen siopao, and a big bucket of, pancit to take home with me, especially when I was in college, right? I didn't have it there. Toccoa Falls is like this little rinky-dink one-horse town up in northeast Georgia that didn't have any kind of that ethnic kind of varietal of food.
Gotcha.
So being here and seeing the Filipino scene grow up, and then and not just here, when I was saying that the Filipino cuisine is the kind of on the cusp of the next big thing. Kasama up in Chicago is the very first Filipino restaurant to get a Michelin star.
Oh, wow.
Which is a huge deal, right? So that's where The Bear was filmed. They filmed some scenes in
I didn't know that either.
in Kasama in Chicago. The Bear is set in Chicago.
Michelin stars, those are
serious.
Those are huge. Yeah. That's a big thing. And the funny thing is you can go to these little restaurants that are about even smaller than the size of my kitchen, and if you see that it's a Michelin star there, that's a place you need to go try the food.
Yeah,
And it's funny that you brought up the Michelin star side of things. I didn't know what it was. I've always heard Michelin stars and everything, and I think one day there was like a TikTok or I looked it up or something, and it was based off Michelin tires.
Yeah, the funny thing about the Michelin star system is it was developed by the French tire slingers, Michelin, and the purpose of it was started off as a guide. That the thought process behind it was, let's put a guide together of restaurants that people would want to drive to, and the more they drive, the more tires they'll need to buy.
Yes.
So, and then it just kind of evolved into its own thing. Like, and then you pronounce it Michelin. It's a little bit more fancy when you talk about the stars. And then it became the star system that we know and love, sometimes hate today. So you don't even think about the tire company other than when you say Michelin. You're like, why does that sound familiar? Oh yeah, I got Michelin tires on my car. But it was just a way for Michelin tires to make money, which capitalism, right? So,
the world we live in, man. The world we live in.
So that's kind of the funny history of Michelin. But that is the gold standard of being a restaurant, and
it's huge, man. It's super cool, and I think like we've been saying throughout this podcast, man, food is a very important thing. You have to eat it. You have to have something to eat, and to go out and try these different things. And it's cool that the world we live in now is a little bit more accommodating to different cultures.
Sure.
That's a big thing. It's not just, one kind of food and that's all you can have. It's nice that, we've accommodated other people, as you said, like the Filipino side of things, it's Hispanic, there's so many different kinds of foods that you can go out there. And especially in Jacksonville, there's everything here now.
You can get anything you want.
If it's not a brick and mortar store, I'm willing to bet you money there's a food truck of some sort around here in Jacksonville that will have a certain kind of food that you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about Jacksonville is it's such a transient city, right? There's people from everywhere in Jacksonville. Transplants from up north, and you have the immigrant population coming in and setting up shop, and you could be from anywhere and get what you've had at home here. And I think that's great to be able to live in a city that I could go and get Ethiopian food down the street. I can go get Filipino food for lunch, and then I can go get a taco from somewhere else, right?
I love me a mean taco. Love me a good taco.
And I'm not talking about Taco Bell tacos. I'm talking about like legit tacos, like legit street tacos that you'd find in Southern California, right? So a lot of people complain, it's like, oh, there's too many sushi places, too many taco places. Well, like I said, we're a large city with a lot of little neighborhoods, and a lot of those, and it's great to see that those little neighborhoods have a little bit of everything.
We're like a borough, like that's what I describe us as, like boroughs. New York, like different boroughs. There's Queens, there's that, there's this, and like there's South Side here, there's North Side Jacksonville, there's East Side, or you go downtown, and you can really get a mix of anything you want here. And I think it's a cool thing, and it's growing even more.
Yeah,
I have a couple final questions for you. So this one I'm going to put you on the spot for.
Okay.
So what are your top 3 restaurants in Jacksonville?
Such a loaded question, man. Top 3. I mean, it depends on what you want. I mean,
I would say closest to your heart is what I would say.
Oh gosh. I would say Abstract is top on that list. Abstract Filipino Essence, just because JoJo's such a great guy. And he just puts so much heart and soul in his food. And he gives you, and just like a Filipino household, they give you so big portions that you're taking dinner home.
I love that. That's how it should be.
So I would say Abstract's up there. I would say for like fine-ish dining, Terra Gaucha.
Shannon loves Terra Gaucha. I love that place too.
I mean, anytime we bring company here, family, friends, whatever, we're making a trek to Terra Gaucha. And then I would say my new favorite, because maybe this is a recency bias, but one of my new favorites, we went to YH Dim Sum.
Oh, I haven't been there. I've heard of it. I haven't been there yet.
It's where Mikado's used to be, out behind the Avenues Mall.
Okay.
And kind of that hidden drive.
Yeah.
That place is great. Now, YH is it's kind of a chain, but the other locations in Orlando, and it's the same concept, but their dim sum is fantastic. And they have a beef congee that my wife swears by when she's not feeling good, because it's ginger and minced beef, and it's a rice porridge, and it's just so hearty, and it's like a warm blanket in a bowl.
That sounds delicious.
It's so good, and their dim sum's really good. But my recent, you said 3.
You're fine. You can keep on going. You're not bothering me.
RD International Market. Have you seen that place? Yeah,
never.
It's off a beach. It's just kind of new.
Okay.
So RD International Market, it's like if you're not from Jacksonville, if you're from, I forgot where they're based, but HK Mart is like this huge like Asian food store.
Okay.
So RD International is this huge Asian food store. You can get produce, any kind of Asian food you want.
Nice.
They have a food court there that is outstanding.
Shannon, we got a new place we need to go try.
They have Thai, they have Korean, they have a new roast duck area.
Roast duck?
Yeah, roast duck and roast pig. The duck is fantastic. You got to wait for it though, man. Yeah, I went there a couple of Saturdays ago, and my wife had an appointment at a certain time. And I thought, oh, this will be plenty of time to go there and get some duck. I seriously underestimated it. So I went in there and I got a little ticket, and I'm kind of watching my watch, and there's like this crowd of people behind me. I was number 71.
Oh.
And the little thing on this is now serving like 59 or something like that. So I'm like, oh, jeez.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I got to go, or my wife's going to be late for her appointment. So I tap on the window, and I'm like, hey, can I just get a refund for this? And I promise I'll come back. I just got to go. I did not anticipate this being this long. And they're like, oh, what's your ticket number? So I held it up, said number 71. And then the guy next to me, he was after me. And he was like, yeah, what's taking so long? He's like, oh, just hold your orders. It'll be 15 minutes. And they kept saying 15 minutes. 15 minutes. And I was like, look, I got to go. Just give me a refund. He goes, what's your number? 71. I said, all right, okay. He's like, it'll just be a minute. I'm like, all right, literally, I'm only going to give you a minute. And the next thing they know, they call 71. And they got, and the riot I about started because I got my food and I was like, thanks. And I walked out, and then I heard just this yelling behind me as I was walking out the door, and like 5 or 8 people were like, cause I was, oops, sorry.
Oh, you're good.
They were after me.
Yeah.
Or no, they were before me. Sorry. They were before me, and I got their food before them.
Oh.
So this dude was pissed.
I would have taken it and been like, thank you. And it's just gone.
I just got it and booked it out of there.
That's how I would have been.
But what's funny is on Facebook that night, I post foodie pics. The camera always eats first, by the way.
I like it.
I posted my picture, and the dude was like, there's a guy that commented and said, excuse me.
Were you number 71?
Well, the guy said, I was there when you got your duck. Do you realize the riot you started when you got your food? I was like, I didn't mean to do that.
I'm sorry.
Hilarious. So pack your patience, because the roast duck place is new of the food court. But the rest of the food court is great, already international. So if you're looking for some just really great Asian stuff, not just the food court, but just stuff, go in there, walk around, take a look. A lot of Asian stores have like these really cool flavored like potato chips.
Yes, I've heard about that.
Yeah, so they have every conceivable flavor. They have like,
what was the name of this place one more time?
RD International.
RD International. I'm going to write this down.
It's on Beach.
Awesome.
Across the street from the River City Science Academy.
I know what you're talking about now. Yep.
So they have like all the different flavors of chips. I had a cucumber flavored chip.
Interesting.
Yeah, not great.
Okay.
Pass on that one. But everything else was, really good. They had these like fried shrimp chips.
Yeah.
That are so good.
That sounds good.
Yeah. So if you're looking for unusual things to do for dinner tonight, and you want to expand your horizons and go outside your comfort zone of what you're used to, go to RD International, and you'll have just a pick of places of what you want to do and eat. And the food court, because it's so varied, is just fantastic.
I'm excited to go try that. That sounds delicious.
Definitely go check it out. It's good.
All right. I'll definitely go check that out. And then my second to last question for you, who is, if you can get anybody in the world on your podcast, who is the big, if you want to call it the white whale, the person that if you could get them on your podcast tomorrow,
man,
who is it that you want on your podcast?
I got to tell you, I was this close to getting them.
Oh.
So the Bear season 3 came out, right? And I found out Jeremy Allen White's agent information.
Really?
Their email address.
Look
A
at
lot of Googling, right? So I emailed that person. I'm like, yeah, I just put it out there in the universe, right? So they got back to me pretty quick. And they're like, well, he's not doing a lot of press for season 3. I was like, all right. And then the press that he's doing, locked in.
Of course.
I was like, I'm never going to get a Jeremy Allen White. But you
never know.
Ask,
you have to ask. That's how I do things. I
have
reach out to people through Instagram and email. That's exactly how I do things.
You have to ask. So, but they said, here's the email address to the publicist at FX Networks. Go reach out to them.
Damn.
I was like, cool. So I emailed that person. I was like, hey, so-and-so gave me your information. Do you have any of the cast and crew that would be available? They're like, maybe. Send me your wish list. I sent them a wish list. Of course, they all said no. But I was like this close.
Hey.
So as far as my dream guest, I want to get anybody associated with the Bear on the show.
I like it.
Because that show was the genesis of my podcast.
I love that, man.
And that's what started me on this, I don't know, hero's journey, I guess. But yeah, so to think that I Googled enough to find these email addresses and email them, and they came back to me and said, well, scheduling conflicts, et cetera. I was like, at first I wanted to reply, I go, what scheduling conflicts? I haven't even told you when I wanted them on.
Tell me where and when, and I will be there.
I will be there.
Yeah.
But they're all winning Emmys now. Like especially the main 3. If you've ever have you seen The Bear yet?
I've watched some clips and stuff with work and doing this and a mix of other things. We really don't watch that much TV as much as we used to. We used to really get into shows, and just nowadays we're just so freaking busy now.
They're like 30-minute episodes.
I will have to check it out because I know what The Bear is. I've seen the concept of it, and the actor in that was from Shameless. I loved Shameless.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite shows when I was younger, so I totally understand.
So the big 3, Jeremy Allen White, Iowa DeBerry, and Eben Boss Bacharach, I can't get them on, right?
I understand.
But everybody
you can't
else,
get them yet. Is what
get them yet, right? So I have these people's contacts now. I'm almost tempted to reach back out and say, hey, season 3's over, the Emmys are done, everybody's kind of calmed down. How about now?
I'd be the same way, man. There's people who have like one person, for example, who I've been trying to get on the podcast is the owner of the Jumbo Shrimp. I've met him twice personally. It's John Babby, I believe is his name. And I've reached out to his publicist, and they're like, hey, the Beast Mode season's going on right now. Or I've reached out to him on the off season. They're like, he's busy right now. I'm like, hey, I'm going to get you. I'm like, one of these days, I'm going to get you on the podcast. Like, my dream is to, or at least for that interview, is to do it on the home plate of the Jumbo Shrimp.
That'd be cool.
I think that'd be pretty sweet. But, man, keep doing it, dude. There's nothing wrong with being persistent. Persistence, like you said, if you don't ask, you're never going to get the answer. And it might just not be right now, but it can be in the future. And you just keep doing your thing, man. I respect it. Keep doing your thing, man.
Yeah, but I can't complain. I've had Emmy-winning documentarians on my podcast.
You got some big names on there, man.
So other big name chefs, I've had more Top Chef contestants on there, and it's I can't complain. I've been lucky with the level of guests that I've had on to be a podcast with literally tens of listeners.
You start somewhere,
man. And for them to say, you know what, sure, I'll be on your show.
Hell yeah.
It's just been a lot of fun, and I don't, monetization always is the goal.
Of course.
If you don't love doing it, then even the monetization is not going to matter. So you got to love doing it, and that's what I do. I love doing it. I love talking about food. I love talking about people that love food, or love talking with people that love food, and getting behind the scenes of some of my favorite TV shows is so fun.
I agree.
Fun.
You gotta think, man, this is a time capsule. That's the way I look at this is, with us doing this for so many years now, I don't have 1 million listeners. Yeah. I say, don't let all these fancy lights and the whole set fool you. I don't have a
I don't know, man. You got a really nice setup here.
Oh, dude, this used to be, my podcast literally used to be a kitchen table right here, and I would have my iPhone set up, and the Who Are You thing would be in the background. That's how I did my interviews.
Yeah.
Or when I first started, it was 2 microphones as Rodecaster Pro, and sorry, there's a limited thing. And we'd just be on our couch. It's just time, man. It just builds up, and that's the thing is I've looked at it as I don't make $1 million off this show. I make a little money here and there, thankfully for some sponsor that we have, but at the end of the day, man, I just enjoy learning the human condition. Yeah. Everybody's lived different lives. Everybody's grown up in different situations. You know, I've talked about, you know, we took them through the whole saga of me and Shannon getting married. You know, I've talked to them about my very lowest points in my life, which there's been a good amount, and then also to where I am today, where I feel like I couldn't have dreamed of the life that I have currently.
Yeah.
And that's just the thing, man. It's just, I do this every single week because it's something I enjoy. I get to meet new people just like you, make friends, get involved with the community. And that's my goal. You know, obviously if it gets to the point where I'm Joe Rogan or something like that, I'm not going to complain one single bit. But at the end of the day, even if it doesn't, this is something that my kids could see. Yeah. You know, say 20, 40, 50 years, I'm not here anymore. This is a capsule where they could see what their dad was like when he was 20-something years old.
Yeah.
You know, the pitfalls that he went through, the issues that he had, and then how he made it through and all that stuff. Or if anything like a story of a guest that I've had on the podcast can brighten someone's day or help them get through a certain situation where they didn't think they were going to be able to get out of it, that's what I do it for. And it's not even someone I know. It's someone who could be across the United States, across the world, who I don't even know, and brighten their day. Yeah, that's the way I look at it.
Same with my grandkids, right? When I'm old and decrepit and into the nursing home or whatever,
that's right.
Turn this on and say, man, that's when Gramps was cool. He was a podcast host.
I totally agree. And this has been an awesome interview, man. Like I said, I appreciate you giving me a shot and being on your podcast. Anytime someone interviews me, I'm thoroughly thankful for it. It doesn't happen a lot. So I do thank you so much again for having me on your podcast.
Same to you, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. And this isn't a one-time interview. Anytime you want to come in, say you got a new show or anything like that, let me know that if you're getting into something new. I'll watch some seasons. We can sit down and do a breakdown on something.
That'd be great.
I'd be more than happy to do it.
Love that.
And then I got one final question for you. So anytime it's someone's first time on the podcast, anytime it's they're new, I always ask them the same question is, do you feel successful? And if you do or do not, in what ways?
I mean, in life, I feel pretty successful. Just, you know, it's always good to be.
What does success mean to you? I guess should be more the question for that.
Yeah. You know, I'm happy, healthy. I'm vertical.
I'm vertical.
So that's always a good thing. I wake up in the morning and I'm thankful to do so. You know, that's always a good day when you wake up. You know, success for me is, you know, happy, healthy. I got, you know, food in the fridge, clothes on my back, roof over my head. Can't ask for more than that.
That's very true, especially in today's world.
Yeah, right. I mean, success as far as a podcast goes, I mean, half of it is just doing it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just do the thing and you're successful.
Be consistent.
I was reading some stat that, you know, X number of percentage don't make it past 40 episodes or whatever. And if you make it past 40, then you're already in the upper echelon of podcasters, no matter how many listeners you have. So I don't know. I feel pretty successful in that arena. I mean, I'm not monetized yet, but that's a goal. But you know, I feel like I got some pretty good caliber guests on my pod. And,
I thoroughly agree.
I'm happy with that, and that's successful to have the people that I've gotten, directors and writers of Hollywood movies, Emmy award-winning documentarians, Top Chef winners and runners-up, and people on my show that do episodic recaps with me, and man, chef consultants on major blockbuster movies. Who would have thought that I would have been able to have those kinds of people on my podcast within the first year? It's crazy to me. So
just keep pushing, man. That's the thing. Like, I find podcasting to be a beautiful thing. You meet a lot of great people. You get to do things that you never thought were possible. You get to have conversations that can change your perspective on your life as well. That's my biggest thing, man, is like, I've talked to a lot of people on here who have come from nothing and made themselves into something. Yeah. And it's really, you know, I had a shitty day at work and I sit there and listen to that. I'm like, okay, I need to change what the hell I'm thinking right now. Like, you know, life could be a lot worse. Yep. So just continue grinding, man. I say, I believe in you. I'm excited to see your growth and your continued growth, and keep in touch, man. I'm always happy to have other podcast friends here in Jacksonville. Come out to a JPU event. I think you'd really enjoy it.
Definitely want to. It just, the luck has not been.
It happens. Favor, I'm the same way, man. You know, work sometimes get in the way, or life just in general. So I totally understand. But if you are going to one, man, let me know. I say me and her go to every single one that happens. So we're always more than happy and introduce you to anybody that's in there. And there's a lot of great community people here who are in the podcasting realm. So I think it's super cool.
What are they, once a quarter?
I think it's once a quarter. Yeah, I think the next one's coming up in December, if I remember correctly. So there'll be one coming up, and get to go network. And they also do podcasting like lunch and learns or kind of thing. So you can go in there and there's actually multiple tables set up to where like say, hey, how do I monetize? Hey, how do I do video recording? Hey, how do I edit my audio? So there's a lot of things you can sit there and learn if maybe you're just not privy on certain things.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot about it. So it's helped me, update my game here in general. So it's a cool thing to go do.
Yeah, Podfest is coming up in January.
Yes.
I definitely want to check, which that's a whole new avenue.
I've never been to Podfest.
I've never been to I've been to Comic Cons because I'm kind of a nerd. I like comic book stuff.
I love it.
Yeah, so I've been to a Comic Con. So when I started getting into podcasting and saw that there was like cons for Podfest, I was like, dude,
me and her need to go to one. I want to go out there with a camera and go do like a what would you say, a vlog. I think that would be super cool.
Yeah.
But like I said, thank you so much for your time again today.
Yeah,
and before I let you go, please let everybody know where they can follow you, subscribe to your podcast, all that good stuff.
Yeah, at Eat Your Content, at Rich Herrera, on social media, at Eat Your Content on YouTube. You can find my podcast anywhere you get your podcast: Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, all of them, all the directories,
all the spots,
anywhere you listen to podcasts. Hope you like it. Listen to it on your way to work. It's good fun. I have a good time, and that's where you can find me.
Yes, sir. So, guys, make sure you guys go give him a follow on all the social medias. Make sure you guys go like, subscribe, comment on any of his posts. If you guys check out his podcast and you're checking him out for the first time from us here, make sure you guys let him know that the Who Are You sent you. I love when, there's cross-pollination between podcasts, guests, all that good stuff. And before we get out of here, make sure you guys give us a follow on the social media. It's going to be at Who Are You Pod for everything from Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all the social medias, as well as if you guys want to check us out on YouTube, it's going to be Who Are You podcast from everything as well. And if you guys feel like you have a story that needs to be told, you're a business owner, an entrepreneur, an artist, a podcaster, and you feel like you'd be a good spot or a good fit for the show, you guys can hit me up on the social media and the DMs, or you can email me. It's going to be whoareyoupod@yahoo.com, and maybe we'll have you guys on a future episode. But as I say every week, y'all, thank you so much for your time today, and we'll see you guys next week.